Well, it's actually really hard to study is the issue. I want to say this because this is a topic, I don't think drugs are involved in all the school shootings. I do think there is a social contagion element to it. Sure. But I do think if you look at the side effects of all of these medications, it's already in the label. If you look at stimulants, right there it says it can cause aggression and hostility. If you look at antipsychotics like Abilify, in the label it says it can cause aggression. If you look at the antidepressants, it also says it can cause mania and aggression and agitation. And
that's kind of the opposite of the intended effect, no?
Well, what these things are paradoxical side effects. And maybe an easy way to think about it is if there were 10 people in a room and they were smoking cannabis, you might have 9 people giggling and you have one person becoming paranoid. There's something just about that person's genetics and the way they respond to it that they have the opposite reaction.
Yes.
And so that can happen with psychiatric medications. And so these are rare side effects, but if you're putting 15% of the population on these drugs, rare side effects are going to happen. And so the next thing is, so we know these drugs can do this. Well, has this ever actually happened? And it has, because there have been lawsuits. For instance, there was one in the early 90s. It was the Tobin case. There was a gentleman called Don Shell who had a bad reaction to He had a bad reaction, I think, to Prozac, and then he was put on Paxil many years later. And shortly thereafter, he became incredibly homicidal, and he killed his wife, his daughter, and his granddaughter, and then shot himself. Now, the surviving son-in-law, the husband of the daughter who he killed, ended up bringing suit against, I think it was SmithKline at the time. It wasn't GSK. They go to a jury trial and they win. It gets appealed, and the appeal isn't successful, and he ends up getting paid out. And so we even have legal cases where jurors have listened to the evidence of these cases and said, if not for this drug, this awful murder-suicide wouldn't have happened. And so we know this happens from court cases, and there have been many other cases like this. You just never hear about them because you're not allowed to talk about this